Meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren, ich darf Sie sehr herzlich begrüßen zu unserem 17. Salzburg Europe Summit. Wie Sie wissen, haben wir immer am Sonntag besonders interessant.
As you know, we had a special discussions. I'm very glad that you have come and attend this meeting. This afternoon is the IRE Forum, Western Balkans Enlargement, Dead End or Fast Lane. Quite a current topic, since we all had to suffer the corona pandemic. Of course, the enlargement of the European Union, this is a topic that was affected not really positively as far as the EU enlargement is concerned. And we have to state that there is a certain stagnation. And we have to ask ourselves whether this is only to be attributed to corona or maybe to other reasons that have led to a certain stagnation. Therefore, we thought that we will get and set together a high-ranking panel. I'm very thankful that we have representatives from 5 countries of the Western Balkans, high-ranking representatives, ministers, vice ministers, state secretaries, and therefore I would thank you very, very much for having attended this forum. May I start at the end with the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Montenegro, Đorđe Radulović. Dear Minister, thank you very much for having come. I also thank cordially Mrs. Jadranka Joksimović, the Minister for EU Integration of Serbia. Thank you very much. You also were here in Salzburg 3 years ago, therefore you are quite familiar with our conference. I'm very glad that the substitute Minister for Foreign Affairs of Albania, Fino, is with us. The minister was unable to attend this meeting, and therefore she came as a representative. I'm glad that Mr. Substitute Minister for Foreign Affairs of Bosnia-Hercegovina, Josip Brkić, is with us. Josip, thank you very much for attending this forum. And last but not least, I thank Mr. Zoran Popov, who is a state secretary in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of North Macedonia, has accepted this invitation. In our General Assembly, I also stated that due to our experience, this tight connection with the UN General Assembly in New York, and many people were not able to attend this meeting or who could come too late. Therefore, it was postponed. The next conference was postponed to October. I must not speak about the Western Balkan situation right now. I do not focus on that. I just want to state that here in Austria we are trying very hard to have an important bridging function between the countries of the Western Balkans and the European Union. And one person who is very active in this field and who is very popular in these countries is our Austrian Federal Minister for European Affairs, Mrs. Karoline Edtstadler. Dear Karoline, I'm very glad and I thank you very much that you have come to us today. And you also assumed this job as a bridging function, insofar as you will have the keynote speech at the beginning. And then I may also ask a person who is very familiar with this situation in the Western Balkans, Mr. Christian Verschutz, who is a correspondent for Southeast Europe and Ukraine. Dear Christian, you can of course talk to everybody in their own language. You understand all of them. That's a great advantage, and I'm very glad that you have assumed this task as a moderator. In this sense, I ask Mrs. Edtstadler for her keynote speech. Dear Franz Schausberger, thank you very much for this introduction.
It's always a pleasure to be in Salzburg, especially for me because it's my hometown. And I will talk in English because I'm also talking in English in the General Affairs Council, where I'm allowed to represent Austria. And I think we all speak the English language, and it's easier than waiting for a translation. Well, first of all, thanks again for the invitation, and congratulations to the organizers of this great summit. And as a Salzburg girl, I wanted to say, it's maybe not obvious that I'm no longer a girl, I would like to say a warm welcome to you also here in Salzburg, and I can only recommend you enjoy also the city and the wonderful weather, because it's not always like that. But first we have to talk about Europe. And it's particularly good that we can talk about the enlargement of the Western Balkan countries, because it's really, really high time to achieve more in this regard. The enlargement process is certainly not a dead-end road. In the contrary, it is up to us to speed up the process, because the future of the Western Balkan countries is also the future of the European Union. And this future lies in this region of the Western Balkans. The EU membership and the accession process of the Western Balkan countries is a key priority of Austrians' European and also foreign affairs policy. And more, it became, during the last years, also a geopolitical priority for the entire European Union. For good reasons, I would say. At the same time, the candidates cannot go full speed at the highway towards the European Union, because this highway needs to be built. And if you want to say it like this, we are in a work in progress, without shortcuts. And it is clear that all conditions for the accession to the European Union have to be met. Austria has close historical, economic and cultural ties with the Western Balkan countries. More than 500,000 of people in Austria have roots in these regions, and many Austrians appreciate the beautiful countries of the Western Balkans as their preferred place to do their vaccination, but vacations. So we are so used to vaccine people, but there's also something like vacation unless we are vaccinated. So the EU integration of our Western Balkan partners is therefore an important matter for us, and it lies at the heart of Austria. We are actively engaged on the ground. We support the states in this region, and we support them especially in the pre-accession process. The region presents an opportunity for all of us. If we are talking about the Western Balkans, we are talking of our immediate neighborhood. And it is also a question of security. The migration crisis in 2015 has shown how important close relations and good cooperations with the Western Balkans are. It is a key that we can really control migration flows on the Balkan route, that we can ensure the security, yes, the security for the whole European Union. We seek under the motto, and it was created not by me, but by our Austrian Commissioner Gio Hahn, of exporting stability to our neighborhood instead of importing instability. It is therefore in our very own interest to support these countries on their European path and to create an area of peace and prosperity, of rule of law and of democracy. I would like to give you some reasons why we should not miss this opportunity to give this credibility now. Let's look in the near past. The Austrian economy has benefited a lot from the EU accession of Central European countries, such as the Czech Republic, as Hungary, as also Slovakia or Poland. Our companies have been at the forefront from the beginning and are still among the top foreign investors in this region. Austria is the top investor in Slovenia and in Croatia, second in Slovakia and third in Hungary. Our domestic economy benefited from the good economic growth in these countries. And I'm sure that it is similar to the Central and Eastern Europe. The Western Balkan partners present also a very great opportunity for our economy. In Bosnia-Herzegovina and in Kosovo, Austria is #1 investor. In Serbia and Northern Macedonia, we are in the second place. But of course, we need standards to make sure that we can have the best use in the economic region. It is particularly important that the laws and regulations are aligned with the European standards. Our companies need stable and secure legal framework. I'm convinced that the approach, the accession process, is the best instrument for quickly achieving convergence with European standards. The European perspective is also the greatest motivation for urgent but often difficult reforms. And we also should bear that in mind in all essential political and economic fields. The enlargement process is therefore a win-win situation for Austria and our Western Balkan partners. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not forget that Austria and the EU also provide financial support for the implementation of reforms throughout the EU instrument for pre-accession assistance, also known under the short-term IPA. Recently, the new IPA 3 program was adopted to support the Western Balkan countries in carrying out urgent reforms and creating a green agenda with sustainable infrastructure through a new economic and investment plan. The EU is also assisting the Western Balkan partners in the context of COVID. And it is really important to make this visible. I remember that I was, for example, in Serbia during the pandemic in May 2020, and I would like to sum it up. In 2020, for example, emergency aid amounting to 3.3 billion euros was provided and 70 million euros were made available to finance vaccines. In addition, Austria coordinated the EU distribution mechanism that provided unclaimed EU vaccines, and we are talking about 650,000 vaccines to the Western Balkan countries. We also supplied medical equipment. On top of all, Austria is willing to donate 1 million vaccine doses, of which Bosnia and Herzegovina, for example, already has claimed for 500,000. Through administrative partnership, twinning programs, and the secondment of experts, Austria also provides expertise in many areas. And I remember when I was still in the Ministry of Justice, already at that time there were experts who were sent to the Western Balkan countries. So we are also talking about other areas like environment, home affairs, health, taxation and customs. You see, I would say Austria is taking its responsibility serious, and I can promise we will continue to do so. But we also have to see the bigger picture. This region is of geostrategic and economic importance, and this is also clear for other powers in the world. If we Europeans no longer have the Western Balkans on top of our agenda and make this also visible to the world, our influence will fall behind third countries such as Russia, China, Turkey, or as well the Arabic states. Already by now, these countries have presence through large investments in key areas such as industry, infrastructure, and energy. It cannot be in our interest to leave such an important region of Europe to the influence of actors outside the European Union. We should really be very clear on that. But I also do see the concerns. There is a certain, let's talk about enlargement fatigue maybe, as the major enlargement rounds of 2004 and 2007 have not yet been fully digested. And because we see that the transformation process takes a very long time. Therefore, the process has been adjusted based on our experiences of 2004 and 2007. The EU developed a new methodology with a significant focus on the rule of law, on the fundamental rights, and the administration. The aim is also to have a clear focus on the goals which we want to achieve throughout this process. And this means that visible reform progress in these areas is essential in order to be successful regarding other technical issues and chapters. Ladies and gentlemen, however, this process must be fair. If the candidate countries fulfill their homework, do their homework, fulfill the precondition, and implement reforms, well, then the EU should also keep its word and take the promised steps. For example, North Macedonia and Albania have fulfilled the necessary reforms to start accession negotiations. This has to be rewarded. Unfortunately, we also notice that there are bilateral problems which are affecting the enlargement process. To be very clear and outspoken, Bulgaria has been blocking North Macedonia for almost a year due to bilateral issues. More and more people start wondering why they should orient themselves towards the European Union. This is fatal because, as I already mentioned, other powers of the world will be very present in this region. They are aware of the region's geopolitical importance and know how to exploit the EU vacuum. This cannot be in the EU's interest. So I think there are at least 3 things we have to do. First of all, we have to find ways and means to demonstrate that the Western Balkan candidates and countries can count on our support, even or especially in difficult times, and even or especially that the journey will be a long one. Secondly, we should assist the countries to sort out bilateral issues, maybe in offering a neutral place to have negotiations and discussions. And we have to be very clear on that also. We can't sort the problems for other countries. And third, as long as the enlargement process is not in full motion, we propose to focus on areas of cooperation that can be further developed, particularly in areas of education and science, for example, through the student exchange programs such as Erasmus, but also regarding migration and security, as well as in regional cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is highly at time to act. We must work together to reach the next stages. The milestones, I would say, they are very clear. First of all, opening negotiations with Albania and North Macedonia through the first intergovernmental conferences. Secondly, a visible progress in the enlargement negotiations with Serbia and Montenegro. And thirdly, increasing the pace to reform in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in Kosovo. The objective is set, EU integration of the Western Balkan countries. Austria is a strong force driving a positive enlargement process in the European Union. Austria is a strong force driving a positive change in the European Union. And Austria is a strong force in reminding all of us that we have to keep our promises again and again. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time to support the Western Balkans. Let's join our forces. Thank you.
Herzlichen Dank. Dobrodošli, mir verehrte, dobrodošli, and also I will continue in English, because it's easier for all of us as a panelist. And I only want at the very beginning one remark about how I, after 22 years in the Balkans, feel the situations there concerning the enlargement process. And before I start with this picture, I only have to inform you, I'm already married with the same wife for more than 35 years. She knows this picture I'm always now using for explaining the situation between the Balkan countries and the European Union, so it's a joke. As you know, in the Balkans you have a lot of beautiful girls, not only in the Balkans, no? And I fell in love with one girl from the Balkans, and I want to divorce from my wife. And this young lady from the Balkans is saying, Mr. Vershitz, okay, in general we can talk about it, but first you are too fat, okay? Solve this problem and then let's continue. Okay, I'm applying to the Weight Watchers. After 6 months or a year of hard training, I've lost 20 kilos. Coming back to the girl, she's saying, okay, Mr. Vershitz, you are looking now much smarter, but you still have not enough hair on your head, so maybe you can change something here else. Okay, I'm following the way of Silvio Berlusconi, having a hair transplantation. Next time, seeing the smart girl, she's saying to me, okay, now you're looking much better, but finally you must show us that you are really fit for a marriage with me, such a young girl. So if you can go up to the Mount Everest without oxygen, I will really marry you. I would say at least after the second condition, I would have said, okay, I'm looking for another girl. So North Macedonia seems to me, and therefore I want to start with you, in a very similar position. You know, you are the long-lasting candidate with the long-lasting with the long-lasting recommendations of European Commission to start negotiations. Then finally, with the Prespa agreement, you had the chance to use a window of opportunity. You changed the name, and then afterwards, Bulgaria came up, and now you are blocked again. So so in this way, I have two questions. First of all, why European Union for you is still interesting? Because you have no alternative in geography or in modernization. And second, it is really simply only Bulgaria which is blocking the negotiations, or are there other European countries which are not in favor of enlargement hiding behind them, behind Bulgaria, and are very happy that this problem exists? All panelists, please, at the very beginning round, don't be longer than 5 minutes, because then we can have also discussions among the panel, and we can also have questions. So, Mr. Popov, please start.
Thank you, dear Christian. First of all, let me commend the speech of Ms. Edtstadler. Out of any ordinary diplomatic politeness, one couldn't agree more on what you have said. And this is simply the way forward for all of us, for Brussels, for the European Union, for Western Balkans as well. It's not that bright, however, at the end of the day. Nowadays, we are closely following the debate in the EU Council bodies on the enlargement, and mainly on the draft declaration for the EU Western Balkans Summit, which is about to take place on 6th of October. Some member states firmly oppose using of wording such as accession, opening of accession negotiations, membership to the European Union. The others oppose inclusion of Western Balkans into debate for for the Conference of the Future of Europe. Third, do not agree to have annual EU Western Balkans Summit. So I started with your second question. We would have been very happy if Austria's position, like many other enlargement-friendly member states, supporting member states, such as Slovenian EU presidency, German EU presidency before that, Portuguese presidency as well, they have invested severe efforts in order to break the deadlock, but unfortunately it's not yet the case. Since I have 5 minutes, I want to share with you what an ordinary Macedonian citizen does think about European Union. It's a hope for better life. When I say better life, I don't think necessarily money. It's better rule of law, less corruption, fairer employment policies, right to study abroad at €0 costs. This is what matters. And this is the most effective way, which we in EU language call it the transformational effect of the accession process. Let me be very clear, we are far from perfect, but we did more than enough in order to begin accession negotiations. Ms. Edtstadler said it's a highway. I think nowadays, unfortunately, I hope in December or next year we will have some positive thoughts in this respect. We are not allowed to enter this highway. It's a two-way street. We are even not allowed to build our lane of the motorway. So people don't trust nor to the government, neither to Brussels anymore. It's difficult to explain that we have fulfilled all our conditions. We have changed even our name. 27 member states, back then 28, have said yes last year in the March Council conclusions. And yet, we are not allowed to start the journey. I repeat, we are referring to opening of accession negotiations, not the final stage. Our countries will be a completely different story at the final stages of the accession, eventually. The new methodology, which has been adopted and supported by all 27, you have a reference which is bold, underlined with capital letters, saying, having in mind the lessons learned so far in the 5 waves of enlargement, bilateral issues should stay out of the accession process at all times. And yet, this is what we have on board. We have no other strategic choice. We will defend our European future and orientation, and we will fight for it at all times. However, Europe, European Union, Brussels, the Commission, Member States, the EU Council should help as well. Young people are closely watching what's going on. Let me tell you that according to the World Bank, 600,000 Macedonians left the country between 2006 and 2016. We are a small country, like Slovenia, around 2 million. And let me tell you, according to the latest RCC Balkan barometer, another 30% are awaiting the decision of European Union and to decide whether to leave the country forever. When I say 30%, this is young people aged between 18 and 34, which means another 600,000 are at risk. What we are looking for is only strict but fair approach. If you deliver, you should be allowed to move on. As simple as that. Nothing else, nothing more. And yet, we are still in the awaiting room. I'll stop here and looking forward to join the debate later on.
I only want to add one one point that demography and this readiness to leave is not only a problem for Macedonia, but for the whole region. And I should say we should not allow that the Western Balkans are becoming a so-called geriatric center in Southeast Europe. Dear Mr. Brkić, talking about Bosnia and Herzegovina reminds me to this old joke that it's much easier to turn an aquarium into a fish soup than to make out the fish soup again to aquarium. So this is to a certain extent what happened with Bosnia during the war. You are even far away from European Union than Macedonia and Albania, or the other two countries which are all already negotiating with European Union. So maybe first, please, can you describe where Bosnia and Herzegovina is now on this way? Next year you will have elections. So is it possible to use this time for some reforms? And finally, how the decision of my country fellowman Valentin Inzko, which was declaring this issue of not accepting Srebrenica as a war crime or crime against humanity, has really created much more difficulties for this successor, Mr. Schmidt, to find a common ground between the three peoples, because I personally think that this decision from Mr. Inzko was something which we could call management by helicopter. Yeah? You create troubles and then leave the country. He did not use the bomb powers for more than 11 years. Maybe we can say also something about, does it still make sense to have an OHR in Bosnia? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I would like to thank all of you participating this beautiful sunny afternoon, and it's really keeping my heart warm to see so many people interested in the enlargement for the Western Balkans. So I know that we are among the group of the friends. Thank you, Minister Edtstadler, for your encouraging words for all the countries of the Western Balkans, and especially defining 3 key points what to do. This is the right way forward, and I know that we are preaching to the converted ones, so that within the General Affairs Council and Foreign Affairs Council, Austria is one of the flag carriers for the enlargement process as such. Not that far away, only 18 years ago, when I was a young diplomat, there was a pledged promise for all the countries of the Western Balkans to become a full member. That was the Thessaloniki 2003, and at that point of time, all of the countries of the Western Balkans, that was called Southeast Europe at the time, through the Stability Pact and through the other means of the regional cooperation, was pretty much on the same level of the integration process. Today, 18 years after, only one country managed to get full-fledged member, which is Croatia, 2013, and all of us are still in the limbo of the enlargement as such. Mostly by not fulfilling our part of the equation. But let's face it, today you don't win elections in most of the European countries talking about the enlargement. So the politicians who are working and dealing within the General Affairs Council, Foreign Affairs Council, enlargement, even though the mouths are full that the Western Balkans is a strategic area for the European Union, is something which is not, let's say, thoroughly pushed within the EU as such. All of the examples that my colleague have mentioned are also for me unimaginable. To discuss about the future of Europe without even presence, right to vote of the countries of the Western Balkans, to be the fly on the wall without right to vote is something which is, in my view, unacceptable. We are no less Europeans by culture, history, social background, whatever religious or ethnic background that we had, but we are not only the member of the institutionalized Europe. And you were asking my colleague on what is the alternative for the EU. We are leaving the alternative of the EU, and believe me, it's not nice. When you see just a couple of 100 kilometers from here, the region of the Western Balkans, you see how challenging are the relations among the countries, on the borders, within the countries, etc. So today I think that we are not on the fast lane, but we are also not on the dead end of the integration of the countries, but the enlargement as such must come back to be what is originally envisaged, tool to spread stability, security and peace, and to strengthen the EU. Every enlargement process of the EU was cohesive for the EU within. I don't want to believe that the previous politicians had more courage and vision than the ones which are today decision makers within the EU on the enlargement. But I think if there is no clear visibility that the Southeast Europe or the Western Balkans, this kitchen garden of the European Union, if the EU enlargement fails there, I have my doubts, could EU foreign policy be any reliable partner on much important global issues? Because really we are there in the belly of the EU as such. This does not exclude responsibility of all of the countries for their part of the homework. That's fine. But as it was stated before, it is a paramount injustice for the countries from my region that met requirements and still the promise was not met from the other side. The negotiations did not start, namely Albania and North Macedonia. When it comes to Bosnia and Herzegovina, being complicated is our middle name. And what you have just mentioned recently, but also from earlier, is having my country in political stalemate today. And on the enlargement process, I would say that we are trying to find the best way to put on tracks, back on tracks, the negotiation with the EU institutions. We are not candidate country. Only country in the region who is not the candidate country.
Kosovo.
My country does not recognize Kosovo, so that's why I'm saying the only country, because I would like to be politically correct. On the other let's say, note, in order to open negotiations, so to be in the phase where North Macedonia and Albania are today, we have to fulfill 14 key priorities given to us by the European Commission. One of them is to close the office of the High Representative, which was led 12 years by Valentin Inzko, Austrian diplomat, right now taken over by the Herr Schmidt, former minister from Germany. So he took it in August. Now imagine, Mr. Inzko was there 12 years. And when I was speaking with Mr. Schmidt when he took over his office, he promised that he's not going to stay in Bosnia and Herzegovina for 12 years. So finally we have a date to try to fulfill one of the 14 key priorities to start the negotiations. It is on the long run. The conditionality put in Bosnia and Herzegovina for to open in the negotiations is of course technical, but also, I would say, institutional. As the citizen of Bosnia and Herzegovina, I am not happy at all to have a foreigner who has the power and mandate to impose any decision in my country. But this is the reality of my country for the stability and until the conditions are met to abolish the office of the High Representative. And once again, as the citizen, I would like to see it earlier than later. Once again, depends on our internal political matureness. This matureness today is reflected that Bosnia and Herzegovina is blocked in decision-making process on the state level, and due to the what you have mentioned, the actions of the Office of the High Representative, one political group that could, block this, took this as the possibility to, make a political statement. I firmly believe that all the solutions must be found within the institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this is, to come back on the table so that all three constitutive people and those who are political players can do the reforms which are necessary before the elections in upcoming 2022. And we hope that the elections of upcoming 2022 will amend the electoral law in the way so that we have all the decisions of the European Court of Human Rights implemented on equal footing of the Constitutional Court of Bosnia and Herzegovina, giving the right for the every individual, right to participate on the elections, famous Sejdić-Finci case, but also to protect what is the right of the constitutive people on their legitimate representation, in order to prevent to have political will opposed on other constitutive people. Very challenging, having in mind the situation in which we are right now, but where there is a will, there is a way. So I hope that by the end of the year, this is going to happen definitely. And just a final note, we don't see, regardless of, as I said, ethnic or religious background, other future than within the European Union. Imperfect as it is, with all of the difficulties as it is, what my colleague said, the values which is representing for us still is, shiny star and bright star that we would like to go forward. And I hope that, of course, it should be merit-based process, but it's going to be more politic-based process, so that within the EU, we put the money where our mouths are, so that go with the concrete and direct decisions of the EU when it comes to the entire region of the Western Balkans. Thank you for the beginning.
Thank you very much. Before I'm switching now to the next minister on the podium, I will want to turn to Tanja Miščević. She is connected with us online because Linda Pregu from the Regional Cooperation Council from Sarajevo could not come. So are we connected with Tanja Miščević?
Yeah, she's there.
Okay. This is Dobar dan. We know each other since she was responsible also for negotiation in Serbia towards the European Union. If we are talking about regional cooperation in the Balkans now, we are very often hearing Berlin process should extend this regional cooperation too. We are very much talking about mini Schengen, which now is called Open Balkan. We much less hear about this regional cooperation council. Can you maybe start a little bit with explaining how you are really trying and how you are able to improve this regional cooperation within a region which is much more orientated still towards European Union, and since only in the last years has really understood how important regional cooperation is. Tanja, please.
Tell her to do it again.
No, stop. Okay, can we solve this technical problem, or shall I continue with another person on the podium and you try in the meantime to solve this technical problem?
We are working on this problem.
Okay, then I will continue. Okay. Sonia Thessaloniusha. Sonia Fino, when I did in July the interview with Edi Rama, when the Austrian Foreign Minister was in Albania, I asked him about the predictability of enlargement process, and he said it's easier to predict that Austria will become soccer champion of the world than that European Union, if European Union will start negotiations with Albania and and Northern Macedonia. Most recently, Angela Merkel was in Tirana too, and that in Tirana said her heart is beating for the Balkans. Unfortunately, she didn't say this at the beginning of their mandate, but at the end of her mandate. So I would ask you three things, please, besides what you want to say. Can you go to two other topics? The one is really this mini Schengen, Open Balkans regional cooperation. How you are dealing with this, because this is an important initiative. Unfortunately, not all Western Balkans are taking part. And secondly, how do you see this called of Berlin process and all other initiatives which always underlines it is not something which should replace enlargement, but very often you have the impression that it is replacing enlargement. Please, the floor is yours.
I need this, yeah. Well, from our point of view, ever since the political system changed in Albania, EU integration of the country has been and is one of the most important internal and external political priorities of the governments of Albania. It constitutes the direction and the core of the transformation of the socioeconomic, institutional, and legal reform progress. And also when I look at the title of this IRE forum, the question of dead end or fast lane can be easily described by the purpose and the status of the new enlargement methodology, the tool that makes the process more predictable, credible, and dynamic, and provides the necessary political steer that has never been used in our case since its adoption in March 2020, the time when Albania has opened the accession negotiations with EU formally with conditions. The picture is very complicated, and perhaps listing some of the results and failures might help us to find the golden principle of balance. So I would like to initially outline the pros, if you will. Since the Thessaloniki Summit in 2003, the Western Balkans have been one of the key priorities of the EU. The goals and priorities of the Thessaloniki Summit were reaffirmed by the Council, Commission, and the European Parliament continuously ever since. The EU is our #1 trade partner today, bringing investment to the region, creating workplaces in our countries. And the EU is our most important donor partner, providing not only financial, but equally important technical assistance to facilitate the transitional period in the Western Balkan countries. The EU played the most important role after the devastating earthquake hit Albania in 2019 and also with the COVID pandemic. In order to keep the economies alive, supply chains running, foster regional cooperation to fight the challenges that the pandemic brought. The Berlin process, supported by the EU, brought the chance of reconciliation and the hope for enhanced regional cooperation, which the region has used in the last 7 years, such as roaming agreement, RICO, Western Balkan Fund, Common Regional Market, Green Agenda, and so on. They're among the most important results and goals that have been achieved through that mechanism. The European Commission has initiated the Economic and Investment Plan that aims to bring up to 29 billion euros to the region to create interconnectivity, single market, foster greening and digitalization, energy security, draw attention of the private sector to our region, and facilitate nearshoring, strategic decisions of multinationals making their supply chains more secure and reliable. On our side, besides taking ownership over the regional cooperation, Albania went through profound changes in the last decades. We've worked hard not to disappoint our European partners. We have fulfilled the 5 key priorities to opening accession negotiations, and later on, the conditions of the March 2020 Council's conclusions for the first IGC conference. We have accomplished so much, as many have assessed, and we are ready to start the accession talks and conduct at the soonest the first intergovernmental conference with the EU. The readiness of Albania for the next stage, the first IGC with the EU, and starting practically the accession negotiations was not questioned in 2021. We did this by keeping the full support of our society above 90%. However, our progress has been delayed without proper explanation. The EU integration process is based on merits. One has to meet certain conditions in order to advance towards the goals. We have embraced and transformed this process into the foundations of our daily work. Nonetheless, if this merit-based approach suffers cracks, the whole process falls apart. So much hard work and results might go to waste and fatigue might reign. The changing and more complex situation in the EU and both our neighborhoods, together with constant delays, is putting the governments of the region in an impossible situation to sustain their objectives to integrate within the EU family. In conclusion, whilst it surely isn't a fast lane, we hope we will not hit a dead end. For the latter not to become true, at least as far as Albania is concerned, we will not despair. We have a framework for engagement with the EU. The EU is ever more present in Albanian life in various sectors. We engage into the reforms for ourselves, first and foremost, and we will sustain the deliveries so far in all our priorities. We will keep lobbying for a date for the Intergovernmental Conference within December 2021. We will keep engaging with the EU to tackle different challenges, neighborhood in crisis, tectonic shifts in alliances, migration, security, climate change, post-pandemic recovery, rule of law, and economic development. But we need political bravery at this time from the side of the EU and a clear message from the Council. The first intergovernmental conference has to be convened in order to keep the credibility of the process. And also the accession negotiations have to roll in order to see that the new enlargement methodology is really a fast track and not a dead end. And as far as the Open Balkans is concerned, I think it's been talked about quite a lot, and we see it as an offspring of the Berlin process and as a cooperation mechanism for the region and to enhance dialogue and cooperation. So, thank you.
But maybe you can add, I know what, no, wait a second, we did not finish completely. Can you say something about Balkan Yapor, Open Balkans? How do you see these benefits?
Well, we see it enhancing and boosting EU accession, and we see it as I said, opening forum for dialogue, cooperation, and bringing us all together, and because we do believe that the future of Europe would not be complete without the Western Balkans and without having a mechanism of us all coming together and working together.
Tanja, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but if
yes.
you can hear me, that is
yes,
important.
It's like Dr. Strangelove, or as I started loving the bomb when they are starting negotiating. Can you hear me? Yes, Tinteri. I can hear you, Tanja. Please, Tanja, if we are talking so much about regional cooperation, what was achieved by the Regional Cooperation Council, and what is the strategy, and are these now interlocking or interblocking movements with Balkan or Open Balkan and Berlin process and you? Can you explain a little bit your perspective? Thanks. 5 minutes, please.
Of course. I will try to be as short as it possible, but to provide information on this issue. Going back into history, but not very far away, just to actually mention that Stability Pact grew into the role of the international organization or initiative, as it is RCC, Regional Cooperation Council, with many pillars of activities. But let me remind you all, or us all, that since the Berlin process has been established in 2014, RCC is becoming something like an instrument, a mechanism of that cooperation. And that became very clear during the summit in Trieste, when the first action plan of the regional cooperation within the Western Balkan 6 has been adopted. This is the regional economic area, and it became upgraded back in 2020, which is October Sofia Summit, with the creation of the Common Regional Market. So actually, Regional Cooperation Council is a mechanism and the instrument for the regional cooperation. Now we are calling it even regional integration, but of the Western Balkan 6 economies. We are there to help and support, but the cooperation is in the hands of the Western Balkan 6. Regional cooperation is one of the criteria for the European integration process. Let us all be reminded on this. But it's with the new initiatives, with the new ideas, it's becoming even more ownership of the Western Balkan 6, and that is the huge and important element. What are the major achievements of that type of regional cooperation? Deputy Minister from Albania already mentioned several of them. Roaming agreement, if we go backward, is the newest one. But this is not the end of the road. That means that we, among ourselves, establish free roaming zone. There is no roaming fees. But now there is another goal, and this is something what we are doing right now. It's to establish the EU Western Balkan 6 roaming free area, which of course depends on the operators from the EU member states. Green lanes is something of the great importance, especially during pandemics. It was the open lanes for transport of goods, especially medical goods and emergency goods during the pandemic, and it proved to be extremely important. And again, a next step, logical step, is to further this to the EU member states. A green agenda that has been endorsed October last year by all 6 leaders from the Western Balkan is now going to have the action plan with a time frame of the measures. So there are, if to cut the long story short, there are several good conclusions out of the regional cooperation or integration that we can draw even up to now. First and foremost, we do not create our own standards. We are using the European standards for establishing cooperation. So the progress of both Serbia and Montenegro during the negotiation process and the alignment with the EU standards in many areas is actually help and support to all others to learn how to upgrade this level of cooperation. Second, regional cooperation is not instead of European integration. This is one step towards the European path of each and every of the Western Balkan 6. And the third very good conclusion that we can draw from the integration process in the region up to now is that we cannot do it without, as Minister Edtstadler said, with a clear and constructive approach coming from the European Union, that the credibility of the European path for the Western Balkan 6 still exists, and it's still strong in terms of the progress and the potential membership as soon as it's possible.
But can you only at least mention some 2 or 3 concrete examples where, besides this roaming agreement, which is really important, you were fostering this regional interconnectivity? I know since the Stability Pact, where Erhard Busek was at that time very active, this was really issues to promote, and this idea. Is it now much easier to come through with regional projects within the region, and do you have more difficulties on the level of the European Union? Because at the very beginning of this regional cooperation, it was also not so easy to get all the 6 countries on board.
We do have all 6 economies on board for the regional integration, and there are much more achievements. If I'm not wrong, until the end of this month, the President of the European Commission will come to the first Serbia, but Minister Joksimović is there to correct me if I'm wrong, to sign the agreements, exactly those that are stemming from the very beginning, very slow process, but reaching to the end, projects that are part of this agreement. Then free movement of people is also in the core of our discussion. how to abolish or how to align the mutual recognition of academic diplomas and mutual recognition of professional qualification is also one of the elements of the process of the regional cooperation that we are dealing with within the RCC. Then a regional hub or the area for the researchers is also something that is the achievement of the process. But nothing is as big as I would agree with you as the roaming agreement, which is one of the most visible and most tangible results of the whole process.
Hvala puno. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gospođo ministarka, I hope you will not have too much difficulties with the light show. Gospođa Joksimović has some problems with the light. It's not only the pity of the European Union that makes her crying. You are the first country next to Montenegro, which is really to deal with the new mythology. And your president is also one of the big promoters of Open Balkans, of this regional initiative. Please, beyond your speech, can you mention also how do you see this new mythology? When do you expect to open the next chapter or something like this? And really where you see this Open Balkans results in regional cooperation, which as mini Schengen should really do something. And do we have an understanding that countries like Bosnia-Hercegovina, obviously, or even Montenegro and Kosovo, which is not recognized as a country by Serbia, but part of this process, want to be part of Open Balkans?
Well, thank you very much, and excuse me for this little problems with my eyes with the light. But first of all, I would like to say something about your comment in the very beginning. We were laughing because it was jokey but you compare EU with a young, beautiful, smart Balkan girl. And I'm not sure that the EU is looking right now like this, but however, it was good, let's say, good try. Good try. However, I really want once again at the beginning to really say many appreciations to Mr. Schausberger and to you and to Karoline and to everyone. Every year, I think that you're organizing such an important event. When it comes to the enlargement process, we often hear geostrategic, geo-economical reasons, geopolitical reasons, fatigue. We often hear actually the reasons as a part of enlargement, as a modeled, as a process of game of power. And it should not be a game of power. It's basically and substantially, enlargement should be defended and justified by the new narrative and wording that it's a part of collective European identity. It's a promise from the Paris Charter for a New Europe in 1990, saying that there is no Europe complete, stable, at peace and prosperous if it's not united from south to east, south to north and east to west. So sometimes I would like to hear more value-based and identity-based, European identity-based narrative about the enlargement, except saying something about geopolitical reasons. Because if we continue to do that, you know what will happen? We will start to consider enlargement as a process where old member state or actual member states would like, on one hand, to maximize the profit from the expanding Europe, politically, economically, in terms of security, and to minimize the costs for the accepting new member states. And by the way, the whole of the Western Balkan GDP is less than 4% of total European GDP. And the total number and population of Western Balkan is less than Romania. So those things are sometimes very questionable when we hear this fatigue. You know, if you have fatigue, psychological fatigue, then your remedy should be to be curious, to be active, to read, to learn, to do something. If you have physical fatigue, then you should work out. You should do something if you have fatigue, not just saying and explaining about the fatigue. When it comes to new methodology, we accepted in Montenegro as well as already acceding country. Don't forget that Serbia and Montenegro, we are associated members. Associated countries, not members, associated countries, since we have signed as mandatory SAA agreement, Stabilization and Association Agreement, and it has been put in force in 2014. 2013. So that means that we are associated country, that we are, everything that we are introducing in our legal system from acquis communautaire is a part of our daily lives, of our citizens. And when the problem occur, for example, migration, COVID or something like that, then we hear from European Union, oh, we are sharing the same destiny, we are living under the same sky, etc., etc. And when our citizens are not obliged or not invited to participate conference on the future of European Union, then it means that we don't share the same destiny. It's not only about the shortcuts. No one asks the shortcuts. We are asking for credibility, accountability, and predictability. Serbia, I'm a minister for 7 years. Tanja Miščević knows that. She was chief of negotiation team while I became minister for EU integration. We are not interested to be second-rated member state. Why should some would like to be second-rated member state? Not to participate in any decision, not just to be a part of some never-ending process. So I really think that new methodology, and we accepted immediately, Serbia immediately, even we didn't know what is it about. No one told us how it will look like. But we immediately accepted, proving that we believe in good intentions of European Union and the best intentions for the, let's say, fostering the process, making more dynamism, etc. I just want to share something with you and, of course, all people here. Immediately, we have reshuffled all our structures. Negotiation team, Ministry for EU integration, in accordance with the criteria of new methodology. Now we have no chapters. We have chapters thematically, in a way, grouped in 6 clusters of joint common European policy. We have more political guidance in the process. President included himself, engaged himself, and Prime Minister in the area of rule of law, because this is the key issue now, and it was for Serbia as always. And by the way, we accepted that rule of games will be changed for Serbia in the middle of the game. And we said, okay, that's the fact, we will accept that, we are fostering our reforms, we are completely ready in this moment for 2 clusters, meaning cluster 3, this is inclusive growth and competitiveness, and very charming cluster 4, green agenda, digitalization and sustainable interconnectivity. So we are ready, and of course delivering in parallel on constitutional reforms, judiciary, independence of judiciary, and all other important, I don't want maybe now to widen this story, but all these rule of law criteria. And I really think that it would be crucial, and believe me, as much as I'm lobbying for opening cluster of Serbia, I'm lobbying as a Minister for EU integration from Serbia for opening accession negotiations for North Macedonia and Albania as well. Because that's the point, to have something to show that new methodology is alive, that someone really appreciates all reforms that we are delivering, so we are not stuck in the process. Because I feel that we work a lot. So in Serbia, nothing is stuck when it comes to the reforms. But when it comes to the procedures and the concrete steps in the accession process, nothing happens. Not only for Serbia, nothing happens for anyone from the region. And just one word for the Open Balkan Initiative. we often hear some kind of criticism because the question was, why now you need another regional initiative? It's an overlapping and it is the same goals, etc. But this initiative came jointly by prime ministers of Albania, Serbia, and North Macedonia, which means that it is based on the trying to reach and to increase mutual trust, political trust, which was not the case for a long time. It's open for everyone. And it doesn't mean that we are undermining or neglecting all achievements from all other regional initiatives. On the contrary, Berlin process made a huge impact on regional, let's say, infrastructural projects, political dialogue, different issues, and it will continue. So no doubt that it was just one good, open, and I would say based on mutual political trust initiative.
Okay, about this we will ask again Bosnia-Herzegovina and also Montenegro now, but I only want to add something. Thank you very much for the remark, because when I am continuing my speeches about the Balkans and I am saying, okay, but in 2004, European Union was still for the Western Balkans looking at this nice, beautiful girl, how it's already a woman in his best years that has to look for a husband, or a man has to look for a woman to be correct. But we are sharing the same destiny, for sure, but maybe not at the same time. And now let's go to Montenegro. Montenegro has also changed. Montenegro has opened much more chapters than Serbia, almost all in this process. When I was once moderating this economic forum in Budva, I was counting that by this tempo you have, with an opening and closing chapters, you will have to negotiate for approximately 50 years to conclude all chapters. So on the other hand, you had also internal political changes almost a year ago in Montenegro. I want only make one remark. Please tell us why Montenegro is skeptical on the open Balkans. And second, we have a saying, and as me too, I am not from Vienna, we have a saying, it's wonderful to be born in Vienna, and it's wonderful to die in Vienna, but what are you doing in between? So what are you doing in between until membership of European Union? Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christian. I mean, I just arrived from New York, and I was a little bit sleepy, but I got coffee timely, and thank you very much to organizers for that. I would like to say that I'm bestowed with the opportunity to be here and to talk with you about this very important issue. I mean, namely, Austria is a very important country for us, because if you try to recall Dickens' A Tale of Two Stories, those were best of the times and those were worst of the times. Austria was our staunch supporters even in the worst of the times, namely pandemic, and provided vaccines and medical help and everything pertaining to that. So just not because, I mean, enlargement process is super important issue for all of us, but it's also a key tenet of our foreign policy. I mean, we do have key three tenets: EU, NATO, and good neighborly relations. And I would say that we've been so far pretty much successful, 2 out of 3. And is this dead end or fast lane? I don't believe it's a fast lane or neither dead end, because it's a path to stabilization. Or if you look at, psychological and philosophical aspects, it's a path to realization, to say what we are made of, finally, to say what we are made of. And I believe that, all Western Balkans countries, we would like to see more from the EU, definitely. Just to have more of the EU engaged in the Western Balkans, and to have more of the EU, being more assertive in the Western Balkans. And because the Western Balkans as such is heart of the EU, and speaking on behalf of Montenegro and promoting my country, I would say that Montenegro is heart of the Western Balkans. So basically, we don't have any kind of hidden agenda. As just Jadranka mentioned, we accepted new methodology, although prior to that we had been negotiating for 8 years, but in the spirit of bona fides, we accepted new methodology, to say that, listen, we are friends, we are frank, and we are genuine, and we don't have hidden agenda. And indeed, a lot of things happened over the last 2 years in Montenegro. COVID and elections and the first democratic change of the government. And of course, we installed a new government, pro-European, that kept maintaining the foreign policy course. And by doing so, I believe that this narrative that only one political party, only one coalition, or only one individual could steer the boat of the country towards West, totally shattered. Because, I mean, this narrative became a myth. And myths are never based on the facts. So I would like to give you a glimpse on the facts. In Montenegro, we do have almost 80% support, of the EU membership. And just this support has been increased over the last 2 years. So if I say that there is no political party, coalition, or individual that enjoys 80% of political support, otherwise I don't think that I would live in Montenegro if that was the case, that means that there are other political forces and other political strengths more than willing to bring country closer to the EU. And now we are talking about carrots. So what do we need in order to make a giant leap forward to come closer to the EU? Indeed, rightly mentioned, we had some kind of small pace accession over the last 3-4 years, but I hope with the new government, we will be able to use this as a springboard for moving forward. And what do we need? We need report on the interim benchmarks. Because, without going into some technicalities here, you do have 33 chapters, and we opened all of the 33 chapters, provisionally closed 3 chapters, but the corner rock of the negotiation process is chapter 23 and 24. So basically, we've been waiting for 3 years, 4 years actually, to receive report on interim benchmarks. We've been waiting for the EU to tell us where we are in order to move forward. And we are not able to close any other chapter without, tackling these 2 chapters. And that's why we need a carrot. And speaking of the Western Balkans as such, because, I heard one very good proverb while I was in Turkey: peace at neighborhood means peace at home. So definitely I'm here advocating not just accession of my country, but likewise I'm advocating accession of the whole region. Because, I can't help mentioning here wise words of Hegel. He said, only the whole is true. We should never forget that. Only the whole is true. And the EU will never be completed without Western Balkans. And without further ado, I don't want to steal any more of your time. I would like to conclude my remarks by citing one of the famous Yugoslav writer, Borislav Pekic, who said, "We should look straight. If we were to look behind us, we would have eyes on the back of our heads. We should love the land of our children, not our grandfathers, because the honor will not depend on where we come from, but where we are going." And on behalf of Montenegro, and I use this opportunity to mention that, to speak on behalf of the whole region, I think that we are going towards the EU.
Thank you very much. Dear Minister Edtstadler, you know Balkan conferences much better than me because you are taking much more part in high-level conferences. But therefore, I have 2 questions. First of all, we have Austria, Slovenia, Slovakia, Hungary, and others which are really in favor of enlargement. So, and we are talking about the beginning of enlargement. What are the arguments you are hearing by countries like Netherlands, France, or others which are not in favor of enlargement? And the second issue is we have elections in Germany, so it's not clear which will be the outcome. France has lost a deal with about 56 billion euros for submarines, and we will have shortly elections also in France. So I mean, what is your expectation for a clearer picture within key countries of European Union, which then would be ready again maybe to deal with the Western Balkans or with these issues like which blades a driver from Serbia has to use when it's going to Kosovo or vice versa? Please.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, I would like to say thank you to all your statements and also send a message that I really understand your impatience, somehow also your frustration, because it's already a long way you went and still there are not enough achievements. On the other hand, I would like to turn somehow a bit the atmosphere and to mention also that you already achieved a lot, and that I would also like to state and also emphasize that Austria could do a lot regarding the other member states you already mentioned, Netherlands, France, Denmark, who were very critical regarding the Western Balkan countries. And I'm thinking back to the time when Austria had the presidency in the Council of the European Union in the second half of 2018, and I remember quite well that the skepticism was even higher, that there were a lot of member states of the European Union who did not really want to discuss and made statements in a discussion regarding the Western Balkan enlargement process. Now things changed, and it's because of Austria, but also France, and I really try to make allies within the European Union regarding the Western Balkan enlargement. And I would like to give you an example. It was a few months ago that I asked for an AOB point in any other business, so out of the normal agenda in the GAC meeting. And I simply asked for putting the accession process on the agenda, because we lost a lot of time. We were so proud in March last year when we could achieve that Albania and North Macedonia should start with the process at least. And to be honest, it was a long agenda already, and I was not awaiting too many statements. But the contrary was the case. There were 11 countries taking the floor, from Ireland to Spain until Hungary, supporting our approach that we have to keep the accession process on the agenda. Because if it's not on the agenda, we are not talking about it and we can't achieve anything. There was only one statement from the guy sitting next to me, Bulgaria, I can say it very openly. And I asked him before he took the floor, I said, what will you tell now? Did you change your opinion maybe? And he said to me, I will leave you speechless. And I thought, okay, maybe he really changed his mind. But he said more of the same. And that's a bit also my, I would not say frustration, but I'm a bit desperate in the meantime, because we have no one we can talk in Bulgaria on a political level at the moment. We have the third elections in 1 year there. We really would like to help to solve these bilateral problems. That's the one thing. And the other thing is, and coming back to your question, what arguments are we hearing from other countries? I think we could already solve a lot of skepticism with these countries, because I remember also quite well my first business trip when I became Minister for European Affairs in January 2020, and I traveled to Paris. And I talked there to the State Secretary. At that time it was Amélie de Montjalin, and I said, what should we do to convince you? And she was very clear, and she said, we need a new methodology, a methodology which is more predictable, where we can see what the countries are doing, what our candidate countries are fulfilling. And at that time, it was not clear that the new methodology will be put on at the table. But the Commissioner, Oliver Vahey, he put the new methodology on the table, and France kept its word. And they agreed for the first step of the accession process regarding North Macedonia and Albania. So I really would like to change a bit this atmosphere. There are achievements. We can move things in the right direction. Yeah, I fully agree. It's too slow. And I also agree when you say we have elections in Germany today. We will see elections in France, and it will be not so easy. or to be a bit less diplomatic, it won't be possible to find a solution in these questions before the elections there will be done. But on the other hand, we also advocate every day that we need the Western Balkans also for the question of migration to solve these issues. And that is seen, and even more seen, as we have several problems at the table, thinking of Afghanistan, thinking of Belarus, thinking of other states around Europe blackmailing us. And we can't have a situation like that. That's why I think the arguments from other member states are less important, and we can convince them if we're sticking together. And I really found also allies, for example, in Ireland. And if you allow me one last sentence to this, there is the sad story of the Brexit. And I'm still desperate that Great Britain really left the European Union, and we still have a lot of problems that we should solve, and Ireland has even more. But what we learned is to keep together, that standing in unity. And I think that's also a learning regarding the Western Balkan countries. I have Spain, I have Ireland in the meantime supporting me when it comes to the Western Balkans. And the Western Balkans are not close to Spain. But telling them the story, explaining, also building personal relations, that helps, and I will go on like that.
Only one remark. Spain is not only part of the solution, maybe also part of the problem. There's no representative here from Kosovo, but Spain is one of the 5 member countries who did not recognize.
That's true, but maybe also there we will see, maybe we will see changes in that regard also. I'm an optimist.
Okay, you know what's the difference is between an optimist and a pessimist in the Balkans? A pessimist says in the Balkans the situation is so bad it cannot become worse. The optimist says it's not true, it can. Mr. Popov, please.
Thank you, Christian. Few comments. Of course, in every cloud there is a silver shining line. We should not never ever forget, as Commissioner Hahn has rightly pointed out during the Prespa dialogue in Ohrid. I do not recall any other major organization in the world which has invested heavily, both from political point of view, but also in terms of financial assistance. And this is absolutely right. However, as our dear minister from Austria has mentioned, some third-party factors are very impatient to step in. Some of them are using economy as a foreign policy tool. The others more through political interference, disinformation campaigns and fake news, and the third one maybe both. So the more viable the EU perspective is, the more distance those dangers will be. Let me put it that way. On the enlargement fatigue, I doubt that an ordinary citizen of the city of Paris living, I don't know, in the 16th arrondissement area knows a lot about the enlargement process and what it's all about. I don't think so. I think what lies behind is a fear of further migration. And it is absolutely clear, fair enough, that EU citizens do not want any further migration waves. But even if we compare the numbers and talk in terms of migration, if we read reports of national agencies of the EU member states, one would notice that Western Balkan citizens are the most welcomed, fully integrated into the society, with lowest criminality rates, and loyal citizens of those countries. EU should be honest towards Western Balkans. Either we will get the full pace. When I say the full pace, it's not a political decision like for some other countries back in 2007 to join the European Union, but to start accession negotiations. Or they have to tell us the truth. There is no further enlargement. We stand ready to provide some kind of a privileged, specialized partnership. So they have to be fair enough with us. And finally, on Open Balkan, I just want to add, as our fellow minister from Montenegro said, there is no hidden agenda. There were a lot of stories and rumors, what lies behind, greater this, greater that. Not at all. None of them. What it's all about is that three countries have to decide to support each other, to transpose the latest EU acquis, first at national level, and then at the level of three. So far, 3 agreements have been signed. Mutual support in natural disaster cases, easier right to work and travel, and the third one is one-stop shop, which means easier, faster customs and border security procedures, which are important and matters to the business. So this is what I wanted. It's not an alternative to the enlargement. It's not contrary to the Berlin process conclusions and RCC achievements so far. I would say it is a supporting tool or kit on the way to the EU.
If anybody on the panel wants to make a comment or a comment of another panelist, please tell me, and Tanja, feel free, you too. But Mr. Brkić, really I would like to emphasize Bosnia and Herzegovina is still very skeptical in general towards this Open Balkan initiative. Why?
Let's just remind us, why are we even speaking on the level of the regional cooperation? This is for all of the individual countries prerequisite within the Stabilization and Association Agreement in order to overcome what was happening in the 90s. So the regional cooperation as such is an obligation to every country, and it is also judged or being merited from the European Commission when there are annual reports on the progress. And Tanja can correct me, but I think that from the day when Bodo Hombach and Erhard Busek later on was walking through the Southeast Europe, and I was there year 2000 in the Ministry of European Integration of my country, until today that we have 27 or 28 regional initiatives, programs, whatever, with the fixed or semi-fixed structure in the region, covering pretty much everything. Open Balkans, or as it was very wrongly named from the beginning, mini Schengen, which is innuendoing that this is something different from the real Schengen, where we all would like to go, is for us still an open question box, and we are getting more questions than replies. Why all of those things which have been mentioned by dear colleague could not be done through the CEFTA agreement that we have all are participating? All of the trade, services and goods can be done there. That's point number one. Point number two that we are looking for the answer is, if this is not a substitute for the Berlin process or what is already going on in the region, why there is no wide support from the European Union. On contrary, some very important capitals are saying that they see this as the waste of resources. And thirdly, our question for the Open Balkans is that our small economy, and as colleague Jadranka said, we are less than Romania in people, and I think that we are around GDP of Romania when it comes to the economic growth, so we are there. Do we have more resources, energy, time, people to invest on another regional initiative or not? So we are posing questions. And maybe the most important one, will any of the country get better, richer, more economically prosperous when cooperating only among poor economies, which we are compared to the EU? Wouldn't it be better if the Western Balkans could be, as was the Austria's case on the enlargement and accession, giving the status and the privileges towards the single market? Why should not be our case or our countries open and access for the single market, of course without membership, but to have the access and some of the privileges to trade and cooperate with the rich to get richer? So for us, and due to the lack of the internal consensus, we still think, and we don't have the final decision on the open Balkans, but we believe that cooperating with the rich could boost our economies and resolve so many challenges that we have ahead.
Tanja,
currently.
Tanja, maybe you can comment on it.
Very much for the opportunity. First, Josip, during the time when you were talking about beginning of 21st century, actually there was the until 2017, if I'm not wrong, 47 regional initiatives.
47.
But 47. But now there are some researches, there are some books on this. Now that we have 17 functioning regional organizations, but still a large number, proliferation, I would say, because of the agenda that can be overlapping. But I would like to really share some views regarding two important things that we are talking about now. It's the Open Balkans, of course, Berlin process. I try to explain they are not competing, but who would not support and applaud to the bigger and faster integration of the regional countries? Nobody. If three of them have the political idea with the vocation to go deeper into the integration, why not? On the other hand, we recognize that this is the region, this is known also within the European Union as the enhanced cooperation that works very good. For us, and RCC is definitely there to support and help. For us, it is the most important part is inclusiveness. As long as the initiative, and as I understood, Open Balkan is the there is an open invitation for all to participate, that is a very important piece of activity. And the second thing is something that I think first was mentioned by Minister Joksimović, second-rate membership, some other initiatives instead of full-fledged membership, if the enlargement process is now in the big problem, strongly against that, strongly against any type of finding a new solution for the Western Balkan 6, but the membership. That's, first of all, it's not possible. Legally, it's not possible. This is not in accordance with the not only Lisbon Treaty, but the primary EU law, but also secondary law. What you are talking, Josip, we are with the SAA getting into force, completely able to assess the single market. The problem why we are not assessing with our goods the single market is actually we do not have the standards that are introduced in so many areas that we cannot produce the goods, but even services, much more. We are in much better situation with the services to compete within the single market. And that is the problem. What we all think that is closely connected with the accession process. As long as you are succeeding with upgrading the level of your accession and opening and start to close the chapters, that means that you are fulfilling the European standards in this area. And last sentence, well, maybe as a curious part, do you know when the term enlargement fatigue for the first time occur in the European Union?
Croatia. Yes.
When UK applied for membership.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanja, and thank you for this information. Okay, but I want to ask one question to the, maybe also to Mr. Radulović concerning mini Schengen. But in general, you know, sometimes we are hearing from European politicians, okay, you should have more regional ownership, be more active, do something in cooperation. Then when you start with some ideas of regional ownership, then very often you hear it must not happen. I mean, there was this idea of territorial exchanges, Serbia, Kosovo, and now this mini Schengen. But in general, there's an example within European Union which really shows that close regional connection and cooperation can have a big influence within European Union, and this is the Visegrad Group. But obviously, because of the completely different history of the former Yugoslavia and Albania during the last 30 years, this is still not possible that you are really are together towards Brussels. You know? And so how do you see this situation? And what's Montenegro's position on mini Schengen?
Yeah.
Balkan open.
Yeah, I mean, what you said, you rightly pointed out. I mean, good neighbor relations is a must. Somehow it's a must that we have to nurture on a daily basis among ourselves. You know, it goes without saying. So basically, a lot of reasons that Josip previously mentioned, you know, those are the arguments that go in favor of why we are still a little bit, you know, precarious when it comes to mini Schengen. 47 regional initiatives and so on and so forth. But I would say the small countries are always precarious, you know, when it comes to joining some brand new, bigger organizations, you know, because, you know, you would like to see what is looming on the horizon in order to be safe and sound. And for us, we fully support economic integration in the region. So it goes without saying. So we just would like to see what is going to be driving force of that. Is it going to be Berlin process, or some CEFTA, or something else? So for us, you know, it's always, you know, open Balkans, mini Schengen, however you call it. You know, it's more security issue, internal policy issue, foreign policy issue, and then in the last place it comes, you know, economic issue. So we fully support economic integration of the region. You know, I don't want to be wrongly understood, but just to see, you know, I mean, open Balkans in its name contains that it's open. So, which means there is an open, if I'm not mistaken, there is open invitation to join it. So when the time comes, if we decide to join, definitely, you know, I don't see any kind of problem to be part of that. But let's see how things are going to unfold in foreseeable future.
Give me only 1 second. We have 30 minutes, 35 minutes, so if somebody only wants to start ask questions, please prepare, because then we will have a discussion, please.
Thank you. Just a short, brief comment on the Open Balkan Initiative, because there are I don't understand so much talking about that, to be honest, because Tanja explained rightly that it was 47 initiatives. Now we have 17 regional initiatives, and you can imagine how much they are overlapping in some particular aspects, in some particular political, economical, you know, social issues, etc. But it doesn't mean that other channels for any other new challenge for communication is a healthy way to talk, to cooperate, and to find proper solution. And I wouldn't see that as some kind of attempt to endanger or to neglect all other initiatives. And I'm very sorry that someone is interpreting this initiative in such a way. Yeah.
Before I give it to Ms. Fino, please for your comment, but I only want to add one thing. If you look at this panel, besides the two Austrians here, the four others have all lived until 30 years together in one country. This is the former Yugoslavia. So there's also much more regional connectivity, also on a private or historical level. Albania was until Enver Hoxha and Ramis Alija completely isolated. how you see now this regional integration of Albania within what is called Western Balkans. And to give you only one example, as you know it, I mean, through the improvement of the connections between Serbia and Albania, you have really getting more and more Serb tourists which are coming to Albania, which 10 years ago was not possible to think about it. So please, for your comment, and then you.
Yeah, okay, it works now, thank you. I think the fact that, as you mentioned, we were isolated, and now we're here, and now we're talking, and now we're having all these dialogues and communication, and even if we add another regional cooperation mechanism, I think it just amplifies our voices and just emphasizes, you know, the need for this political and economic cooperation together. And this is one of the main reasons, I think, that why we strongly support the aspirations for EU membership for all our countries. And it's a good thing that we're here now and having these discussions and having this progress that we've made. So we don't see it as just another initiative. We see it as another way to echo the calling for dialogue and mutual trust. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I would like to catch up with what was already mentioned and starting with a message to the European Union, because I think holding a carrot alone is not enough. That must be the message for all the member states of the European Union. What we see as a reaction is a positive thing, I would say. We see that there is a closer cooperation within the region of the Western Balkans. And I would really like to catch up with Jadranka said. It should not be seen as a negative symbol. In the contrary, we always need the regional cooperation. And we learned that during the pandemic that it is so needed to have close cooperation with the neighboring countries. When I'm thinking back of the 13th of March, I was not on the phone with Brussels. I was on the phone with the Czech Republic, with Slovakia, with Hungary, with Slovenia regarding our commuters to find a solution that they can come in and to their working places. So I think that's something very positive sign that there are green lanes built up. And I myself was during a conference when these green lines were then also signed. I was representing our Chancellor at that conference, maybe you remember. And I think it's great to have this. And we also want this subsidiarity within the European Union, which means that people are working together in the regions where the problems occur. And that's something positive. The third point I would like to make is allies and alliances within the European Union, which is more important than ever. We are thinking, and you mentioned the Visegrad 4. We also have the Frugal 4 plus Finland. I started a new project now with the Alpbach Declaration to find really allies within the European Union who sign or who give a really good sign for the commitment regarding this process on the Conference on the Future of Europe to overcome and to bridge the problems. We do, of course, see, and we are also within the European Union, coming from different points. And I would also like to send the message that, in my opinion, and we are really always advocating for that, the countries of the Western Balkans have to be included in a formal way within the Conference on the Future of Europe. They want to be part of the future of the European Union. They should be part of the Conference on the Future of the European Union. And more of this, it's called the Conference on the Future of Europe. So we are talking of the whole continent. I think things are moving, and the answer I'm always getting also in Brussels is, there's no geo-blocking, and people can, of course, also participate within this platform. So I really sent a message to your countries. Tell the citizens of your country that they really participate also on this platform. Because if there is a high input from your countries, there's also a high pressure. And we, as countries who are on your side, can use that also as a good argument.
I have one last question before I give the floor to the forum. As we are here in the Institute of Regional Cooperation, Regional Initiatives, and this I also want to ask Tanja, but the ministers, how do you have really also cooperation on the regional level, but even between the regions, if you have them within your country, and even the cross-border cooperation. I give you one example. We did one story about the cooperation between Temesvar and Zrenjanin. And this is a really very good example of close border cooperation, because while the EU was financed medical equipment in Temesvar, and people from Zrenjanin can go to the eye doctor in Temesvar, and they do not have to go to Belgrade, but 50 kilometers instead of so much more. So, I mean, how you try really to promote this regional cooperation on this level, and do people know in your countries about this opportunity at all? And I would like to start now with Tanja Miščević, and then let's go the other way around back to Mr. Popov, and then I give the floor to the questions, and also to Mr. Franz Schausberger. Tanja, please, maybe you can underline something or comment something about this regional cooperation, cross-border or between regions.
Yeah, that exists for decades now. It has been upgraded all around the region, but there are also projects and programs that are not so much known, like for instance, the touristic trails around the region, which became interesting for all of us living in the region during the time of pandemics, but also attract a lot of tourists, not only from Europe. So it connects Subotica via Mostar to Kotor as one of the trail, examining the historical background and the historical less known things about the time of Austro-Hungarian Empire, especially during that period of time. But not only tourism, which has a huge potential, and that there was a huge work on tourism in the RCC that is not very well known, but also some other aspects of the already existing cooperation within the region that we introduce something more, and this is a digital. So learning into the digital skills in order to upgrade the level of cooperation, which is possible. So we are facing now the different hubs to be created to use this virtual space. But there are so many different type of cooperation and connections established of the civil society. For instance, we have now a regional platform for discussing the environmental issues, biodiversity in the region. We are working very close with the health secretariat, which exists and it's situated in Skopje, for instance. That is a not very known initiative that exists in order to help and mitigate potential next waves of pandemics in terms of better coordination, cooperation, early warning system even. So many of the activities that has been established, the cooperation up to now, and connecting the common people. The idea is, of course, to upgrade that at the level of creating something like a regional labor market with not having the borders for recognition of diploma and professional qualification, and of course already establish the good cooperation in terms of deleting all possible or going above or beyond all possible borders for travel or for trading in goods, but now even trading in services, which is the important thing.
Thank you very much. All the panelists ask on the comments. This is also the final then, so that we can have some questions. Okay, Mr. Schausberger said at the end, but Austrians will be final. They were so dominant in the Balkans for 500 years. So, Mr. Radulović, and then we go on this line.
Just whatever, I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything that Tanja said. I mean, regional cooperation is of the paramount importance, you know, and I know that Churchill once said that Balkans produces more history than it can digest it, but definitely coming back to the quote that I just mentioned, you know, we have to look in the future and to create, you know, the land for our children, for the sake of our posterity, not to be guided by our history, definitely. And you mentioned Visegrad Group and everything. Of course, every Western Balkan country has intervened history with other Western Balkan country, but somehow Montenegro preserved peace and stability in its territory over the last 30 years. So I know that maybe Balkans, they produce more history and more political burden and historical burden on its citizens, but we managed, you know, to not have any kind of war in our territory over the last 30 years, you know, and this multi-ethnicity that we managed to preserve in our country is kind of constellation and the true fortune of our citizens, because according to our constitution, it stipulates that sovereignty belongs to the citizen. So, I mean, just would like to cite once again, and for the last time, I promise, Abraham Lincoln, who said, "Government of the people, for the people, and by the people shall never perish from the face of the earth." So basically, we would like to be that kind of government, and without that, you know, we will not be in our hearts part of the EU.
Thank you very much. As a slogan, Polyrat nego pakt, polykrop nego rob, it's longer not an option.
You have perfect Serbian.
After 22 years, this was a saying, better wars and pact. This was March 41. So how do you see how Serbia sees its position within the Western Balkan countries, as it is for sure clear that by 7 million people, by dominant economy, it's the strongest part of these countries?
Well, thank you for the question. Before, I will also mention something about the cross-border cooperation region when it comes to cohesion policy and regional politics. But before that, I really think that we are very often, that there are actually very often overstated narrative about the problems in the Western Balkan and the history of Balkan as general, because Europe as a continent and European Union as well has proven that are really resourceful crisis-producing power. So it's not only about the Western Balkan. And we are overstating the problems in the Western Balkan. They exist. They are part of not solved all problems, but it doesn't mean that EU and the rest of the European continent is not resourceful about the crisis as well. So the goal is to make this crisis be solved in a proper way, in a proper manner. That was the goal for EU membership. That was the goal of European Union. And beside that, economic progress, prosperity, etc. And just one very important word about the regional policy and cohesion policy, because we all, as a candidate and potential candidates, we are now in a phase preparing ourselves for, let's say, potentially smooth transition to cohesion policy and to structural funds. One of the very important instruments that Karoline mentioned as an IPA-free new perspective provides also as last perspective IPA 2, 2014-2021, a lot of European Union funds for the cross-border cooperation. So we have a lot of programs. For example, Serbia, we have program with Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Croatia, North Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Montenegro. So we have 7 programs already for last 10 to 12 years, you know, participating with local communities, regions, with each other by the European funds. And this is something that improves people-to-people diplomacy. And that is the most important added value. By the way, for the first time in Serbia, we have more than 45% of people knowing that the EU is the biggest donor, and they know for some project financed by the EU funds.
Thank you. This is a really huge progress, also concerning the marketing. Please.
I just want to reiterate on the point. Oh, I think it works. Reiterate on the point of one of the, I suppose, good things that came out of COVID, which was the tourism across our region, and how that helped, and how by going across the border, we got to experience more of our region, and I think that also helps in terms of a more personal approach. And definitely everything that we've mentioned so far with the cooperation will absolutely bring stability, sustainable development, and of course our main achievement to bring us all closer to the EU. So, yeah.
Gospodine Brkić, Mr. Brkić, please your final statement.
On the issue of the
Also
cross-border cooperation, this is the, I would say, the best element in the pre-accession funds where the people-to-people contact is made, cross-border municipalities and regions jointly developing a product that is offered for those who are doing vacation, not vaccination, in our region, and doing it cross-border. Via Dinarica is one of the key examples where Croatia, Bosnia-Hercegovina, Montenegro is doing this. As Jadranka said, we had also the same level of cooperation with Serbia. So, in my view, these are the key points. And it's very good, and it's visible because there are every now and then big blue, posters saying financed by the EU. People are seeing that some investments in this infrastructure is done by the EU, and by this stating that the EU is the biggest, economic and every other, investor in the region, regardless of the propaganda of the third players, which were mentioned by the introductory speech by Madam Minister Edtstadler. In the view from Bosnia and Herzegovina, enlargement process, since we are at the very end of the enlargement process as such, not being a candidate country as such, we firmly believe that this should be more political. What you are doing within the General Affairs Council, Madam Minister, having the group of friends and trying to create these circles of friends for the enlargement is something which is of crucial importance. Insisting in doing our homework, that's fine. But at the same time, to explain that the Europe is not, or the European Union is not fully integrated without this kitchen garden, without this avlia, which is called in my language, this inner court of the European Union as the EU is, or as the Western Balkans is concerned for the EU. With this, with more political, pragmatical approach, we are going to close the door, or at least to put the foot on the doorstep for every other third players who is having maybe different set of values, ideologies, or whatever they would like to sell in the region of the Western Balkans.
But this was not only a lapsus linguae, vaccination and vacation, because there was a lot of cross-border vaccination in the Western Balkans as well.
Yes, that's why I said it is conducted for the vacation.
Mr. Popov, please.
We are a firm, staunch supporter of the regional cooperation. It is one of our 3 foreign policy priorities, along with NATO and EU membership, and we will continue to do so. We do believe not just only in better political and economic ties, but we do believe that we have a lot in common, first between us as a region, in sense of energy security, transport networks, green corridor, fight against terrorism, fight against illegal migration, and then as a region with the European Union. So for us, it is priority number 1 at the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to reiterate what I already mentioned. The European Union is not completed without the 6 Western Balkan countries. And it's not only worth to fight for the integration of the Western Balkan countries, it's needed in the interest also of the European Union. Because it's a question of security and I repeat what I already said because I think that's the crucial sentence, it is a question of security for the European Union, and it is a question of credibility for the European Union also. So I fully second what was said. Of course, we have to be clear that the preconditions have to be met, that you are doing your homework. But on the other hand, we have keep our word, and that is what we try to do. Austria is a friend. I think that's very clear. Everyone knows that in the meantime. Of course, I'm going on this track of finding friends among the European Union. I would also like to send a message, help us to help you. What do I mean? Inform us. Let's also be part of your progress in the region, because then we can report that to Brussels. It's always the best way to do it directly. It is also important that we can make visible that the European Union is also doing a lot for the region. And that's where we sometimes fail, sometimes are not too good in communicating as a European Union, as the whole European Union. So I think there is a lot of room for improvement also from our side. I am delivering this message to my friends in Europe also. And my last point is that I think we should also look, or have a look on the point that citizens are making friends among them. Because then there is a better understanding. That economies take the win-win situation. You mentioned the money also for the green transition. Because then there is a better understanding if there is an export of technology also to the Western Balkan countries. And the last point is, which I wanted to mention, that we of course are supporting the Slovenian presidency in the Brdo Declaration. We hope that this conference will be a big success. We know that it is not very easy. You remember, we had this Western Balkan conference also in Austria. Sebastian Kurz, our chancellor, was doing that. We had also the honor to have a working session, a very intensive one. But we need all of you. And that's my message, and I keep being an optimist.
Thanks. Before I give the floor to Mr. Schausberger, there was one question here. Yeah, wait a second. Here the microphone is coming. And there's another question. Okay.
Thank you very much. Grauchenberg from Institute of the Danube Region in Central Europe. I have a question concerning the attitude of Bulgaria. Now, when we think back, when our neighbors joined the EU, despite of some difficulties, I think concerning Czech Republic, for instance, the Beneš legislation or other things, we always welcomed very much that every one of our neighbors becomes a member. Now, what is the thinking actually in a country like Bulgaria? They should be also happy to have a stable neighbor who is a member of EU. Okay. What is behind? I mean, there is this question of the language, which is a rather historical question. But well, what is the other reason? Thank you.
The first question I have now, to whom did you ask this question?
Yeah, Bulgaria is not here, but maybe you may have a comment on it. Anyway, then North Macedonia must have a comment on it. But they are the victims.
Okay, we direct this question first to North Macedonia, but there were other questions on this side. Let's collect these questions together and then we have this answer. So this was the question. Yes, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, great. I apologize in advance if my comment or question,
who are you?
Milica Marković, student, will be long. First of all, good afternoon.
No,
I would like to...
Stop. We have no time for comments. We have 10 minutes, so please ask a question.
Okay, then...
We have only time for a question.
It's a question for Minister Radulović concerning how are you handling new challenges that Montenegro faces due to its government change after a long period of the rule of the former party. It is clear that most of the political representatives are supporting enlargement in EU. However, there are still a lot of open issues like corruption, organized crime, freedom of expression, and a huge brain drain. So maybe just a short comment of your view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is one, I think there are two more questions. No, one.
Hello, my name is Berkan Pazarcı. I'm the Turkish Consul General in Salzburg. Actually, I have a comment, but you can take it as a question.
Then formulate it, please, as a question.
Okay, I will formulate it this way to Minister Edtstadler. You have mentioned that countries such as Russia, China, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia have some influence in the region, and that's something that is not desired. I should remind that Turkey is an Eastern Balkan country, and you also mentioned that these are countries that are non-EU countries, whereas Turkey is an associate member of the European Union, and we have, just as many other Western countries, Balkan countries, we have also an ongoing negotiation process for full membership with the European Union, whether you like it or not. So it means, like you suggest, that Turkey as a Balkan country, as an EU candidate country, should not have relations with the Balkans, where we have been for 400 years. So we have very deep historical and cultural relations with these countries. We have been in all the mechanisms, such as the Southeast European cooperation mechanism. We have also trilateral mechanism, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, and so on. And we have wonderful bilateral relations. I don't see why you are trying to exclude Turkey and why you are somehow declaring your own Monroe Doctrine for the Western Balkans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's start. There's one last question.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bestar Krasnici, student at University of Salzburg from Kosovo. Besides the fact that you discussed about the EU not opening the negotiation with Albania and North Macedonia, we have another case with Kosovo, which is the only fully isolated country in Europe right now where people cannot even travel to Europe. Yeah. I have a question for the Minister for the EU and Constitution of Austria, since she's here. If you cannot do anything to change their minds for France, Bulgaria, and others, why you and other countries didn't do anything to make the visa procedures easier for us? Since I can confirm that for Kosovars, it's a nightmare to get a visa, even for Austria, Germany, and countries that have fully supported the visa liberalization for Kosovo. So when we point fingers to Bulgaria and others, while we don't see any initiative in cases where you can do something. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I only want to mention that Kosovo was invited, but did not come finally because concerning some they felt that their independence status was not fully accepted by the invitation. As you have asked me twice, please start you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I have nothing against close cooperations between countries, but I think the European Union should really play the most important role in the Western Balkan countries. If we are looking at the Western Balkan countries at the moment, and I was in Albania and North Macedonia in May, this year, then we see that enterprises, companies from other countries than the European ones are building highways, for example, and the companies from Europe do not have any chance. We see that the ties are closer to some other countries than to the European ones, and I can maybe mix the two questions also with the student from Kosovo. I'm very sad that we still were not able to have visa liberalization for the Kosovo. I remember that we tried to make a solution already during the Austrian presidency, and in this regard I think it is also very important for people that they have, especially young people, that they have the opportunity to go to the capitals of Europe. And what we are seeing is that they are going to Istanbul, nothing against it, but please, I want to see them coming to Vienna, to Berlin, to Paris, and see what we mean, because we are already the European Union and they want to join the European Union. So that's my short answer. I could have a much more longer, but I think that's straight to the point.
Mr. Radulović.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Madam Markovic, for this question. I mean, I'll try to be brief. In a nutshell, yes, indeed, we changed the government for the first time after 30 years. It goes without saying. And all these diseases you mentioned, those were and those are inherited diseases, I would say so. Indeed, we maintain the same foreign policy course, not because I wanted so, and I wanted so, just to be clear, but because, let's say, fifth of the parliament, wanted the same, and 3 leaders signed this famous agreement on the maintaining the same foreign policy. So when you ask about fighting corruption and curbing corruption, I would like to mention that this government has a couple of principles, tenets, and the main tenet is zero tolerance to corruption. Why? I mean, among other reasons, because we are not politically affiliated. So we are technocrats, experts, call us however we want, and we don't have any kind of reason to back any kind of corruption. And I would say the Deputy Prime Minister so far has done a tremendous job in this sense, and because he is in charge of this, Deputy Prime Minister Abazović. And I would say that next step is going to be to appoint a new prosecutorial council. After we do so, definitely something called capture state, the notion that I haven't invented, but it has been written in many European Commission reports, is going to start losing its grip. So it means that first we have to appoint new prosecutorial council, and after that, judiciary and other institutions will start doing its job. In a nutshell, that was in a nutshell.
Then let's go to Second World War. Dear Mr. Popov, please, maybe you can at least a little bit explain what the issues are about these negotiations,
Just a quick comment, although this is a question for senior officials in Brussels from the Commission or European Council. I won't enter into debate why and what Bulgaria is doing. I can tell you what North Macedonia is doing, in a nutshell. We have signed the so-called Friendship Treaty back in 2017. And it had many, many positive consequences. The trade has doubled in 2018. The tourism has tripled. And yet, we have been blocked. North Macedonia believes that more and closer political and economic cooperation, more trust between the two, more joint actions in the region and towards the European Union are and will be highly beneficial for all. And we will keep the same policy course. What I want to tell you as well is, according to our estimations, Bulgaria has a right to block North Macedonia more than 150 times or opportunities throughout the accession negotiations. So I'll stop here.
Dr. Schausberger, do you want to make now a short comment or after, or do you abstain of the comment? Okay, then I will thank you all panelists. Tanja, thank you very much for joining us. All panelists, I thank you very much also for the time discipline. I thank you very much for this interesting discussion, and I give finally the floor to Mr. Schausberger to make a final comment on this regional issue. Okay?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very, very much for this very interesting discussion. I mean, it was very vivid and, yeah, very, very exciting. The first comment from my side is that we have the experience that the cross-border cooperation on the regional level is very, very important and helpful. If on the national level there is war, it's not really war, but if there are big problems, you can help with cooperation on the local and regional level to decrease these problems. I think this is very, very important. I remember when we had before the accession of Croatia a big project in the institute between the Austrian regions, in southeastern Austria, and the Hungarian, neighboring Hungarian, the Croatian regions in this part, and we took also Bosnia and Herzegovina cantons and regions, and it was very, very helpful, because we brought together people on a level where they never discussed about European matters. And so it was interesting with children, with artists, with whatever. So I only can say this was very, very, very good, and I hope it was helpful. The second thing, as a little provincial politician, for me, I can tell you, sometimes all the discussions are absolutely too complicated. I think we should focus on the main things. I cannot understand that, for example, Northern Macedonia, which is since I think 2005, is a candidate state, and there was a big precondition. I understood it. This was the case of the name, and should be fulfilled. And then it was fulfilled, and it was not easy for Northern Macedonia. So what happened? I mean, we agree that the countries in the Western Balkans, they have to do a lot to fulfill all the preconditions. But on the other side, I'm sure that also the European Union has to fulfill a lot of things. Because, I mean, you cannot say if you solve the problem with the name, then, of course, we will start with the negotiations. The second thing is that negotiations, the beginning of negotiations, is nothing, in my opinion, because it takes years to the end of the negotiations. So, I mean, why we cannot start with, I would say, with Northern Macedonia and with Albania, because it is, I mean, that the other two will become depressive, I understand. And so I would say, and we know, I mean, we should speak frankly. There are some Western European countries which have internal problems, and they take their internal problems on the EU level, and they are against the negotiations and the starting of negotiations. It's the same, I mean, with Kosovo and all these problems. The third thing is, I remember when I was with Commissioner Hahn, he is already here in the house, with Commissioner Hahn in Sarajevo, all the prime ministers were together, and he made the proposal of this mini commercial market, not a mini Schengen, to work together for the common market, a mini common market, to prepare for the big common market in the European Union. And I mean, not everybody, but most of them were, they agreed. Nothing happened. Yes, what I wanted to mention, last year, if I'm right, there was the meeting in Ljubljana where there was the decision to start with Northern Macedonia. What happened in this 1 year? So, I mean, at the end of my contribution, I only want to say both sides have to do a lot, but also the European Union has to do a lot. And I'm sure, and I'm convinced that, for example, Madame Edtstadler, she is always, you know, what I mean, she's always pressing and supporting your countries, but there are mighty countries. For internal problems, they cannot agree with us. That's the problem. So thank you very, very much. It was really great, and I hope we will come together next time, and we made big steps forward. Only a technical information. This panel is now finished. The panelists will now have the possibility to discuss with Commissioner Hahn extra. And then, of course, you are invited to the reception in our residence. I hope you will come. It would be great for us if you are joining us. And all the participants here, of course, are also very much welcome to this evening event. The shuttle will start at 6:45 from here. So please come here in front of the Congress Hall, and the shuttle will start to the residence. Thank you very much. Enjoy the evening, and I hope we will see again.